of the events of the week with them. I am a thorn between two roses today. We are joined by sometimes platform announcer, Tangata Whenua from down Stewart Island, consultant in all the best ways a consultant can be a consultant, Tina Nixon. Tina, how are you? Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Where are you talking to us from? You're over in the Rapper?
I'm actually sitting in the Ngaitahu offices right at the moment because I've got a meeting here today.
Oh, you bloody freeloader. All right.
I am not freeloading.
Oh, just keep it down and you get in trouble. And also joining us, a regular, we've interviewed her several times on the program. She's a lawyer of some note. Also, I think, a fearless spokesperson for the Jewish community in New Zealand and an observer of life in general, Juliet Moses. Juliet, lovely to have you back with us.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
All right. Look, I just had a very interesting interview with Winston Peters live, who's back from this trip to Australia, where he and Judith, I think the most remarkable thing about this trip, guys, firstly, is that the New Zealand Air Force plane got there and back without breaking down, which has got to be some sort of record. Do you two get the feeling, I'll start with you, Juliet, that there is a change in our approach to defence and foreign affairs under this coalition government?
Yes, I do get that feeling, and it's a welcome feeling. I understand the importance of us having an independent foreign policy, etc., but we have to be realistic here about the world that we're in, and it's a very, very different world to what it was, a few decades ago, even a decade ago, yeah. I think. And we have to be realistic that we don't have much of a defence force, and we need alliances.
Yeah. Tina, I speculated earlier this morning, being independent in your foreign policy doesn't necessarily mean you always have to be neutral or non-aligned. You can pick a side and still make your own decisions, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that it's a welcome sign that we've just got slightly more sensible about how we're managing ourselves offshore in that sort of very fraught space of foreign affairs and defence. So it's good to see Winston and Judith in that space. I have a lot of time for Judith, and I think she is going to be a very good Minister of Defence. And just that slightly more hawkish tinge to the statements is not a bad thing for us right at the moment. It just shows that we're just tiny. We're just so tiny in all of this whole sort of sphere, but we still do count because of our position in the world in terms of just the geography of it.
All right, so you like Judith. What about Winston, Tina?
No, sorry. I'm always going to be an anti-Winston person. I'm pro-Shane. I think Shane's got a lot going for him, but I just don't trust
Winston. Let's not make it personal, Tina. Let's play the ball, not the person. Juliet, do you think we can be, if you like, non-aligned or independent, but actually pick a side? And do you think it is time we did?
Well, yeah, I think what you said is exactly right. Independent doesn't mean always doing our own thing, or not in the way I understand it. It just means that we will make our own minds up. And if that happens to coincide with some of our allies or some other states, then so be it.
Mm. All right. Some would say a big week in terms of, or a big couple of weeks, Juliet, in terms of foreign policy, particularly this week with, I guess, statements out of Winston Peters that funding for the United Nations Relief Works Agency, this special agency set up exclusively to take care of Palestinians, and we only give them $1 million a year anyway, but that's not due to the middle of the year. But at least the impression from the government that it might join other countries in suspending that payment because of the involvement of UNRA staff in terrorist activities. You must have welcomed that. The Jewish community must have welcomed that. But does it mean anything?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question because, as I think David Cooman on your show said, whenever it was yesterday, the day before, there have been some slightly confused and conflicting statements. But the fact that they are looking at it, at least, is a good thing. UNRWA, this is not about depriving Palestinian people of humanitarian assistance at all. In fact, I think it's the opposite, because as we know now, a lot of that aid has not been going.
And we're giving more aid to outfits like the International Red Cross,
Correct.
who are also doing work
Correct.
there. Yeah.
So we can do that. There are other organisations on the ground. UNRA is part of the problem in this conflict. It is not part of the solution. We've been talking for years about the poisonous curriculum that is taught in schools that incites violence. It sort of encourages, martyrdom is supposedly sort of the highest aspiration. It teaches that Israel has no right to exist. All this kind of stuff. So it is very much part of the problem. There's been all this, Hillel Boyer, who's the head of UN Watch, did an excellent presentation at Congress the day before yesterday, where he just laid out all the facts about UNRWA. The fact that, according to the Wall Street Journal, 23% of male employees of UNRWA in Gaza have a role in Hamas. They actually are active in Hamas in some shape or form, including even being commanders. So this is not just a few bad eggs. This is a systemic problem, and it needs to be dealt with if we want to have any hope of ever reaching a peaceful solution of some sort.
Julia, and this is by no way derogatory to you. You, of course, because of who you are, and you can't remember who you are vitally interested in this. I don't know why I've become vitally interested. Tina, you walk in different streets and know different people than I do. Is this a big issue for people? Do they think or not?
Well, yeah, there is a lot of talk about it. I'm one of those who's a political dork when it comes to international, and especially Middle East politics, and I struggled to know the difference between Iraq and Iran a few years ago. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. This is about corruption, and I think that I would have liked us to be a little bit firmer in our position on this, and that's what I'm saying around the slightly more hawkish positions of Collins and even Winston around our foreign policy, and some more demonstrable definite things that happen that show that we are not going to put up with corruption on this scale. And if you're going to wipe out Hamas, you're going to have to wipe out Hamas. And so if there is a problem where we've seen an organisation that's been tainted, then it needs examined. It needs the funding withdrawn until we find out exactly what's going on here and what the extent of the problem is. I think people are becoming interested because it's such a huge issue that does have an effect on us, and it's having an effect on us societally at the moment, and so you are hearing a lot more conversations about it.
Yeah, Rent a Mob are also out in force. And
of course they are.
And I have to say too, I'm interested in your guys' perspective on this. I get the feeling that our mainstream media, as in so many things, have picked a side on this, and it's not the side against anti-Semitism. It's not the side of the IDF. It seems to be the side of the Rent a Mob bunch and Hamas and the terrorists. Tina?
Yeah.
Yep.
Go, Juliet, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, sorry. Well, yeah, I mean, yes, I agree. Look, there is some media who they're trying to be sort of, I guess, balanced, or they would say they're trying to be balanced across the board, so not necessarily if you're listening to, I don't know, RNZ or whatever, they'd say, well, we're balanced across, months or whatever it is. But yeah, there is some awful, coverage. One of the things that, I mean, it's not necessarily in mainstream media so much, but is all over social media right now, including from academics and, some quite influential academics, is denying that October 7 happened, or that it happened in the way that Israel said it happened. God. And that is absolutely frightening to me. So on the one hand, they're saying, no, Israel's lying, it didn't happen like they said, there were no rapes, there's all this stuff about, where's the evidence that there were, the people, that women actually and some men were raped, that kind of thing. But on the other hand, believing everything that Hamas says about, every day
Hamas
South
Africa says in its case to the ICJ.
Yeah. Exactly. But apparently every day Hamas knows how many people have died, have been killed, down to the last number. That is not possible in a situation like that to know how many people have been killed every day in this intense urban warfare situation. So there are people who are just believing Hamas, hook, line and sinker, don't want to believe that October 7 even happened. So I know that's not
I think it's bigger than
question, Sean, but
I think this is much bigger than this, though. It's around that sort of victim culture and the coloniser thing. And that really worries me, and I am sick, and I'm sitting here in the hallowed halls of Ngaitahu, but I'm going to tell you right now that I'm sick of hearing the word colonisation, because the colonisation happened years ago, decades and hundreds of years ago in this country. It is not happening now, and yet the coloniser argument is now being used around Palestine, and I think that's where all of those sort of people who are feeling like the victims are buying into it simply because it fits the narrative that they're getting used to around feeling like a victim because they're being colonised, and look, here we go, this is the same with Palestine.
All right.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Tina, because I've had some conversations with some Māori friends about exactly that issue, and they've said they're very worried in particular about younger generations. Someone said to me he had to explain to some younger relatives that the protocols of the Elders of Zion was not actually a real document. And I agree, the colonisation argument has really taken hold. And I just keep thinking, when you've got Maori people completely denying that Jewish people have any connection to the land of Israel, that they were ever there, that kind of thing. And then I think, how did you react when Winston Peters said last year that Maori people aren't indigenous to Aotearoa? You didn't react very well to that for good reason. That's the same reaction we have when you say the same thing to us. So, it's very disturbing, and I don't know quite what can be done about it.